Hi, thank you for joining us today on the VSC podcast. My name is Olivia, and I'm the Community Prevention Manager for the Victim Service Center of Central Florida, where we provide free therapy, support, and advocacy for victims of sexual assault, violent crimes, and traumatic circumstances. Today, we're exploring the importance of trauma-informed care and its role in a survivor's healing journey. I'm excited to be joined today by Tamara Nelson, a licensed mental health counselor and certified trauma-informed yoga teacher. Tamara, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'd like to start by asking you to share a little bit about yourself and tell us what the importance of trauma-informed care is when responding to survivors.
Yeah, so as you mentioned before, I am a licensed mental health counselor. I've been working as we all say mental health therapist, for over 10 years now, and I specialize in trauma, trauma and PTSD. And so you were asking about trauma-informed care, so what that is. So trauma-informed care is basically where you have an understanding of how trauma affects the way that a person thinks, how they feel, how they behave, and you're operating from a way that acknowledges that. So you're basically, and I want to also start with being trauma-informed is not specific to just mental health professionals.
Right.
All professions, whether it's a hospital, a dental office, a bank, we should all be operating from a trauma-informed lens. So we are operating professionally in a way that acknowledges how trauma may impact a person in order to reduce causing further harm to that person. So what that can look like the basic principles of being of trauma-informed care is first, trust and transparency. So acknowledging that survivors of trauma may not easily be able to trust,
Right.
and that we're allowing them the time to build that, that we're also being consistent in our practices, that we're, doing our sessions on time, that we are, having consistent communication, we're being clear about expectations. So that's also part of a trauma survivor, being able to have a sense of trust in you as a professional. Empowerment is a big part of being trauma informed, so that we're giving folks choices. So having that they have an input in their care, and that they know what options that they have, and allowing them to choose that instead of us dictating what we think they should do. Other part of being trauma-informed is also operating from a anti-oppressive, in a multicultural lens.
Right.
So recognizing that trauma can impact folks differently who are coming from diverse backgrounds, or different intersecting identities, and that someone's identities can also affect their access to care, what healing looks like for them. So we want to acknowledge that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution to healing. So those are some of the primary tenets. Safety is also a big part.
Yes.
So when safety can come down to how we're operating as a professional, so honoring if we're talking about a mental health space, honoring our clients' boundaries. That can come down to personal space, how they want to receive communication, things like that. It could also come down to the physical space that we're holding. So do we have proper security in the building? Do we have things set up in a way that's going to minimize the chance of someone being re-victimized or being harmed?
Right. Okay, so that sounds like there's a lot of important elements to trauma-informed care, including keeping the center focus on the individual, what they're comfortable with, what they want to consent to, what they feel is best in their own expertise of their experience.
Right.
And that trauma-informed care can apply to multiple professions, not just mental health counseling, but everyone should be trying to employ a trauma-informed lens.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for providing information on that. I want to know a little bit more about how you found yourself incorporating yoga and trauma-informed yoga into your practice as a mental health counselor.
Yeah, I love that question. So I've been practicing yoga since 2012. So even before I became a therapist, I've been practicing yoga. Movement in general has been a huge part of my life since childhood. I was involved in dance, multiple sports, and so it's been a huge benefit to my own mental health and my own healing. And so the transition from being a practitioner of yoga to being an instructor happened in 2020. So during the pandemic, and I think that was a big shift for a lot of us.
Definitely.
And just seeing how the pandemic was affecting people, not just physically, but mental health wise. And then also a lot of the events that were happening during that year or during the pandemic, outside of just COVID itself.
Right.
It was affecting me, and then also affecting my community and other communities. And so I just had this shift where I'm like, okay, I've been doing this for a long time. People have been telling me all my life, like, hey, you should be a yoga teacher. Or people just assumed I was a yoga teacher. And I never saw myself doing that. I never saw yoga teachers who looked like me. So it never occurred to me that I could be that. And so I found a yoga instructor who provided like the training, the certification, and who looked like me. And so I decided to take the class and got the certification. And then I started to do, from there, more research into the benefits of yoga, how it supports mental health, and how it supports survivors of trauma and PTSD, because that was my clinical specialty. And so once I got that information, then I started to think, okay, well, how can I incorporate this in what I'm already doing?
Right.
So that was when I came up with the idea for the Healing Through Movement group, which I know we'll talk more about.
Yes.
So I sat down and created this whole layout. I did an additional certification to become certified as a trauma-informed yoga teacher, and not just a general certification as a yoga teacher. And that's when I got more insight into how I can incorporate this in a mental health space.
Awesome. So it sounds like you had a personal history of healing and enjoying movement and dance and yoga, and then moving through into mental health counseling, finding a good way to kind of incorporate those two things together to support other people and to support people in your community, and just overall have a more maybe comprehensive or holistic approach to the survivor's healing journey, which is awesome. Not everybody heals in the same way or responds to things the same. You mentioned that you wanted to get that trauma-informed certification to add into your yoga skills. What are some of the differences between trauma-informed yoga practices and the traditional approach that people might be more familiar with? Right.
So let me start by saying that all yoga should be trauma-informed. We should be operating from that lens. But how this can look different, like a class that is being led by someone who's not trauma-informed might include like a yoga teacher using physical assists. So that's where a teacher may come across someone who's in their class and maybe put their hand on their back or a certain body area to help them to do a physical adjust. And so how that would look different in a trauma-informed yoga class, the instructor would either not use physical adjusts, and they would just demonstrate to show how a pose or posture is done, or they're going to ask for consent.
Right.
So that can look like using consent cards, where I've seen that in classes where they'll pass those out, and a student can decide, flip on either side whether they want it.
What they're comfortable with there.
Exactly.
So it sounds like, again, that trauma-informed yoga approach is taking into consideration the individual, what they're comfortable with, and how they can be respectful of that.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Tamara, thank you so much for being today. We're going to have you on our next segment as well to talk a little bit more about this, but thank you for your time on sharing this. Up next, we'll be learning more from Tamara about trauma-informed yoga, so please stay tuned. Hi, and welcome back. In the first part of our conversation, Tamara, a trauma-informed yoga teacher, helped us understand what trauma-informed care is and how yoga can help survivors of trauma. Now I want to get in some more detail and some practical applications for our viewers at home. Tamara, thank you again for joining us today.
Of course.
I want to talk specifically about yoga and trauma-informed yoga and why this is a specifically unique and beneficial healing process for survivors.
Yeah, so it's unique in that it's more of a bottom-up approach.
Okay.
So when we think about like traditional therapy, it's usually a top-down approach where we're starting with the mind, the cognitive piece, the thoughts, the emotions, whereas yoga or in other words, like a somatic practice, a body-based practice, is starting at the bottom, the body level, and then that can be a pathway to accessing emotions and thoughts. So it's just a different way of healing. And so some of the other question was like the benefits.
Yes, yeah. What are some of the benefits you see for survivors who have tried this form of therapy?
Yeah, so some of the benefits of a somatic practice or yoga as a form of healing is one, it helps survivors to have a more emotional regulation. So in a yoga practice, you have not just movement, but also breathing practices, so pranayama, and you also have a meditative piece to it as well. And so deep breathing, meditation, movement, all of that promotes a relaxed state in the body, which is going to support your mental wellness, is going to help you to regulate your emotions a lot better. It also helps with the mind and body connection. So as you're going through that practice of breathing and movement at the same time, it makes you more aware of your body and what you're feeling, your environment, and that's increasing that connection. And as something that's very common with specifically with sexual assault survivors is there can be that disconnect between the body or a lot of discomfort or like physical pain that is coming from the trauma that they experience. And so yoga can help them kind of reground into their body, build a sense of safety within themselves.
Wow, so it sounds like it's a really unique practice for them that involves multiple elements and helps them feel more comfortable, more at peace, possibly working on the mindfulness element, and reconnecting with their bodies some, throughout that process. What are some of the specific benefits that you've seen for survivors who are coming through that might encourage those who are on the fence about trying a new form of therapy such as yoga?
Yeah, so some of the benefits I've seen from the group that I've been running, and I've been doing the Healing Through Movement group for about 2 years now.
Okay.
And so we pass out surveys at the beginning, a pre and post survey where the group members can rate like the level of connection that they feel to themselves and to others, and their ability to cope with certain symptoms and things of that nature. And so in the post survey, we always see a dramatic improvement from the pre-survey. And most of the time it's like 100% improvement in all of the areas on the survey. And so some of the comments and feedback that we've gotten from group members is that, they feel a whole lot more peaceful. They feel their mood is improved. Can never forget a group member that shared with me that attending after a class that was the first time that their mind felt still. And that was like profound, like to hear. And we have a very consistent base of group attendees that have started from the very beginning that continue to come, which shows that they're getting something from this. So a lot of it is just being able to have a moment, even if it's just an hour and a half in their life, in a month, where they're still and they're in a restful state and they feel good in their bodies and they feel connected to the other people in the room too. There's a lot of power with movement and moving with others in the same space. So they're getting that social support, they're getting the physical and mental health benefits of yoga.
Awesome. So you've seen some really positive feedback from the people who have gone through this process, and that group element, that community piece of healing and working with survivors is such an important aspect of it. To know you're not alone, right, is so important. And you're right, even if it is just that 1 hour out of the month, someone knows that they can go and have a reprieve and reconnect with themselves. It's such an awesome opportunity. So you mentioned our Healing Through Movement support group. Can you share a little bit more about that and let the audience know how they can connect with us to get more information about that?
Absolutely. So the Healing Through Movement group is once a month, so it's every third Thursday of the month, and it's in the evenings, 7:30 p.m. The group is held at a donated space, Peaceful Peacock, Orlando. So definitely want to shout them out. And they are also a trauma-informed yoga studio. So if anyone wants a regular yoga practice, highly recommend checking them out at peacefulpeacockorlando.com.
Awesome.
And so the group, the basic layout, we always start with a little bit of self-reflection. So I always have a different theme every group. And the attendees will come in, they have like about 15 minutes to kind of sit and write their responses to the reflection questions. And then when we start the group members introduce themselves and they will share, if they want to, they can share responses to the questions. The whole purpose of the reflection questions is also to promote learning like coping tools from each other. So the themes are always focused on some level of like healing or coping.
Right, and you get to learn from the other participants in the class. That sounds awesome. I'm so glad that we have that opportunity for people to come and try and find new avenues for their own healing journey.
Right.
You mentioned that in addition to this movement element and this mindfulness piece, that there's some breath work involved that might help individuals feel more calm or more at ease. Would you be able to walk us through maybe a simple breathing exercise that our viewers could try at home?
Sure, yeah. So wherever you are right now, just finding a comfortable placement, and we can do that together. As you're seated, just loosening your muscles in your body. So if you notice tension somewhere, just dropping the shoulders, relaxing the facial muscles, and then we'll just do a few deep breaths together. So start with taking a deep breath in through the nose, and you should feel your stomach expand like a balloon. Holding the breath for a few seconds, and then slowly exhaling through the mouth. As you exhale, just noticing the seat, the chair beneath you, or the ground beneath you if you're laying down. Taking another big deep breath in, holding the breath, and slowly exhale. And then we'll take one more big deep breath in, holding the breath, and slowly exhale. And that's just a short example of a breathing practice.
I feel calmer already. So just 3 deep breaths, breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, holding it for a few seconds, noticing the way that your body feels, noticing maybe, the ground beneath you, the chair beneath you, that type of thing. Awesome. So individuals could hopefully try this at home, and if they're feeling overwhelmed or stressed out, just remember that help is a breath away, or 3 breaths away if we're doing it the right way, right? We can have some control over our bodies, hopefully.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that today and for sharing about our support group, Healing Through Movement, and how people can connect with us for that, and just your expertise in mental health counseling and trauma-informed yoga.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I hope our viewers today feel empowered to try these practices and to explore yoga as part of their healing process. Up next, I'll be joined by one of VSC's victim advocates and crisis counselors, Tish Olasande, to learn more about what a trauma-informed crisis response looks like, and stay tuned. Hi, and welcome back to the VSC podcast. We're joined by Tish Olasande, who is a crisis counselor and victim advocate at the Victim Service Center of Central Florida. Tish, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate you spending time and sharing about your expertise.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Would you mind sharing with our viewers a little bit about who you are and what you do at the VSC?
Absolutely. My name is Tish, as you said, Tish Olasande. I am with the Victim Service Center. I am originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I started this journey with victim survivors about 13 years ago. I started at the Sexual Violence Center in the Twin Cities metro area, and then eventually moved to Florida and started with VSC.
Awesome, awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do in your role as a victim advocate and a crisis counselor, and why that position is so important when we respond to survivors of trauma and sexual trauma?
Absolutely. So what we do here at the Victim Service Center as an advocacy crisis counselor, I am the one that you first see, the one that does your first, I guess you would say, experience with the Victim Service Center, which allows us to be able to not only advocate for you, but it also allows us to be able to do sessions. So we call them sessions. And what we do is we do a small intake. And as you come in, it's just an opportunity for us to get to know each other. I always say our first couple sessions, we're just building a rapport. We don't expect you to come in and spill your whole life with a stranger. So I always tell all our victim survivors, it's just an opportunity for us to get to know each other. And then we start what we call like a crisis plan. So that may include goals for yourself, personal goals. It may also include physical goals. We can help you navigate the judicial system, helping you with legal services and different things of that sort. A lot of our victim survivors come in and there's barriers around them that don't allow them to start their healing journey. So the first thing I look at is how can we remove those barriers so we can start this process of your healing journey. So we include all of those things as a crisis counselor and an advocate.
So you're really survivors kind of first stop on their healing journey when they're ready to reach out to an organization for support. They're coming to you or one of our other victim advocates or crisis counselors to get the foundations built for starting that healing process.
For sure. We answer the phones. You're not speaking to someone who is just a person that's in administration. All of us do the same job. We answer the phones. We're your first step. We're the person that decides what advocate would be a great fit for you and what that looks like in the process of your healing journey. And as I stated, we always make it small intakes, nothing really big. And then we allow you to be able to decide. I always say your voice, your choice. You're an opportunity to decide how that healing journey looks for you.
I love that. Your voice, your choice. That's awesome. So it sounds like survivors really get to kind of be empowered and take their own role in their healing journey and work with an advocate that's going to fit best with them and what they're looking for, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's a process.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. And we want them to be able to be a part of that process, but not only a part of the process, but in advocacy, we want to teach our victim survivors how to advocate for themselves.
Right.
And it's important to have a voice. It's important to feel that empowerment. I always tell people when they come in the door, you know all these things, it's just gotten hidden behind the barriers and the layers of trauma. So once we remove those barriers and allow you to see yourself authentically as yourself, it's very important.
Awesome. That sounds really incredible for them. And so why do you feel that your role and the role of a victim advocate and crisis counselor is so crucial in our response to survivors who have experienced trauma?
Well, I think that's important because it's their first stop. They were brave enough to pick up the phone and call. And that in itself can be very, very hard.
Definitely.
So in the process of us helping that person identify what their traumas are, I always say my job is to heal your heart, get you ready if you decide that you want to pursue therapy and things of that sort. But let's heal your heart first so our purpose can be the healing process, but not only a healing process, but preparing you if you do decide that you want to go to therapy. We all know that can get a little deeper sometimes.
Definitely.
So we want to make sure that you're ready for those things.
To do that really tough work and self-reflection and all of that is required in therapy. So they'll come to a crisis counselor and victim advocate first. You'll help them heal their heart. And then if they choose, they'll move forward with a therapist to work on maybe a weekly or bi-weekly basis to work through some of the things in their mind as well, right?
Yes.
That sounds awesome.
Yes.
So what would you say to individuals who maybe are on the fence about receiving care or receiving services or support from the VSC, and maybe they're thinking about it, but they just don't know how to take that next step in their healing journey?
I always tell people there's a language to victim survivors. And sometimes it feels like the world doesn't understand your language. I tell people that we understand your language. We see you. you know, authentically for who you can be and who you're going to be. And sometimes being in that position as a victim survivor and trying to just navigate the process of the assault is hard, as we know. But to have someone that is there by your side, that can see you, that when you do talk, understands your language, understands how important it is to be very mindful of the questions that we have and the way that our victims, survivors respond to those questions. So it's important that when they do decide that they want to move on through the trauma, we're absolutely right there. I always tell people, you know, I don't ask you to take this journey alone. I tell you, give me your hand and I'll take this journey with you. And then when you decide that you no longer need my hand to hold, I'll always be here to support you from the back end, you know?
Right, kind of moving from that coach position to that cheerleader position.
Exactly, that's exactly how it looks too. And so coming to us for that first step, coming to us for that first time.
Yeah.
And us being able to open our arms and keep them open and hold you through the trauma and some of the things that come with it, because it will show up.
Right. Maybe just knowing that we believe all survivors and we're here to support and hold your hand could be the hope or the next, you know, push that they need to come receive services or support.
For sure.
So to wrap up our segment today, I want to ask you, as we approach the holiday season, we know that that can be a particularly difficult time for survivors. What is some advice that you could give to them as they try to navigate this season to take care of themselves?
Friends can be family too.
Right.
You can pick and choose who you choose to spend the holidays with. It's important that you surround yourself by people that support you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And sometimes that can be friends.
Right.
You know, this new age group in this age, they call them Friends Thanksgiving, Friends Holidays, different things of that sort. I think it's important that you choose, as a victim survivor, who you choose to spend your holidays with can be very important.
Absolutely.
It can be very triggering sometimes to be around family.
Right. So, so choose who you want to keep around in your space during these seasons that especially maybe triggering things could be coming up, or it may be just particularly difficult for them to get through. Remember that you can have your friends close as well, whoever you feel comfortable with. Tish, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your expertise as a victim advocate and crisis counselor.
You are very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. For those watching at home, if you or someone you know could benefit from the services provided by the Victim Service Center, you can visit our website to learn more, healhere.org, or you can reach out to our hotline, 407-500-HEAL, for support. Remember, healing isn't always linear, and you are not alone.